Perfect. All right, Diane,
All
take
right.
it away.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you, everyone, for your attendance this evening. We appreciate that you are participating in this month's bi-monthly Hill District Plans meeting. Dylan, if you'll turn the slide for me, please. We at the Hill District, we want to make sure that everyone knows that the Hill CDC is a place-based organization. We focus on equitable redevelopment and revitalization of the historic Hill District. We like to say it's where cultural legacy meets future innovation, and we're celebrating 37 years of operation. Next slide, please. Tonight's agenda, we are very fortunate to have several presenters this evening, including the Urban Redevelopment Authority. They will update us on the Center Avenue projects. We also have the Pittsburgh Water and Sewage Authority. They will be going over the state of authority for 2024. And then we also have the City of Pittsburgh Department of City Planning. They are going to review the citywide proposed zoning amendments, as well as the Hill District Master Plan updates and the adoption. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Dylan at this point.
All right, thank you, Diane. The Hill CDC has been around, like she mentioned, for over 30 years, and we like to break our work down into three components: people, place, and policy. So, the Hill CDC's mission is to work in partnership with residents and stakeholders to implement strategies and programs that connect these three pillars to drive compelling community development in the Greater Hill District. And I'll just go a little bit more in detail about our work. So for our place and people and policy, we have the real estate development team, which focuses on the commercial core corridors, such as Center Avenue and Wiley Avenue. We're also interested in Heron Avenue. There's so many different nodes to the Hill District. And so we're working in partnership with, for example, the URA, Department of City Planning, to help redevelop those corridors and increase the amount of home ownership in the community. That's our people. Our people programs are focused on business and entrepreneurship, as well as, again, home ownership preparation. We do lots of home ownership preparation workshops with the Urban League. And we also really believe in arts and culture as a driver of economic development. And we primarily focus on those through our Nafasi Art Gallery on Center Avenue, which Diane can answer more questions about if you're interested. And we then focus on our policy and planning department. That's where I spend most of my time. We focus here on promoting equitable development throughout the Greater Hill District. Later on tonight, you'll hear from Ose, who is our neighborhood planner over at the Department of City Planning. We're working on adopting the Greater Hill District Master Plan into the city code. And there's a number of other plans on that are for the Hill District, which you can read more about at our website, which is www.hilldistrict.org. And so all of those neighborhood planning efforts are spearheaded by our policy and planning department. And one of those main projects is our development review panel, which several of the projects that Leah is going to talk about have gone through the DRP process. Some are still too early, so they don't necessarily have a preparation, they don't have an application prepared, but we expect that they will submit. The DRP is the Hill District's united voice on community development. It is a two-step process that facilitates community review of proposed development projects. And it's fully staffed by the Hill CDC, but it is run by the residents of the Hill District. And if you're interested in learning more about that, we have a save the date later on in this presentation. Our final community meeting for the year will be on November 21st. Doors will open at 5:30 and the meeting will start at 6. We hope to see all of you there. But otherwise, I'll kick things off by passing things over to Leah Matthews over at the URA.
Thanks. Okay. Next slide. I'll start on that one. So before I get into the projects, I just want to reiterate the process we went through. In 2020, the URA released a request for qualifications, and this was aimed at minority and local developers in the Hill District to revitalize Center Avenue as the main commercial corridor. Out of that process, we got about 7 projects. And what I want to say is from 2020 to now, they're all in different places. And that's just to say how complex these things can be and kind of like how complex it can be to put the funding together for projects like this that are like building capacity and kind of newer developers. So we'll start with Big Tom's Barbershop. Big Tom's Barbershop will rehabilitate the old Hams building at 2178 Center Avenue, and it will be rehabilitated into a mixed-use development that will have first floor commercial space, and that'll house the Big Tom's Barbershop. And then there'll be 2 affordable residential units above at 50 to 80% AMI. And then there is a lot adjacent to it that will be used for outdoor amenities, community programming, community events, things of that nature. So this project was actually one of the first ones we got going. However, once the developer started construction and got more into the building and started exploratory demo, it was discovered that there had been a fire that had significantly damaged the structural integrity of the building. So right now, the status is that we're working with the developer and we've just engaged an architect to address those structural issues. And then once those are addressed, the construction can continue. Next slide. Okay. This one is Salon XO. This will rehabilitate 2209 Center Avenue. The developer is Salon XO and Bridging the Gap, Derek Tillman, if you're not familiar with him. The first floor of the building will be the Salon XO Spa and Wellness Center. She has an existing business, so she'll be moving her existing salon into this space, but also adding some other components to it. And then there will also be 6 affordable residential units at 50% AMI above the commercial space. Right now, the status of this project is that it's in pre-development fundraising state. The building is in really, really bad shape. It's in poor condition. So we're trying to understand what the best strategy is for moving forward with the structure. Do we maybe save the facade, or how do we best go about that while also not trying to overinflate the cost of the project? Next slide. Rhythm Square, and I believe this one has come through the DRP, so this one should be a little familiar. But this one will rehabilitate 2225 and 2239 Center Avenue into a mixed-use development, and it's broken into 2 phases. So phase 1 will be the first floor commercial space for 2239 Center Avenue. So we'll have first floor commercial space that will house Studio Volsi's new offices. They're an architecture firm as well as developing this project. And then the second floor will have artist studios. And I want to clarify, they're not residential or anything like that. They're working studios for the artist. Phase 2 will build 5 units of affordable housing above the artist studios. The status of that one is that it has completed the 3rd URA board action, which authorizes us to sell them the land. But we've only approved phase 1 at this time. And since completing the 3rd board action, there was a small increase in the construction costs. So right now, the developer is working on value engineering, and then we're also working to see if there's any way we can fill the gap after they've completed that exercise in value engineering. And then once that gap is filled, they can start the closing process for phase 1. Next slide, please. Thanks. Amani Christian Community Development Corporation, they're going to be rehabilitating 2159 Center Avenue, and it will have 2 first floor commercial spaces and 12 residential units at 30 to 60% AMI above those commercial spaces. This developer has completed the 3rd URA board action authorizing us to sell them the land, and they're currently working on closing. So they're in the closing process and hoping to start construction probably Q1 or Q2 of next year. Next slide. Sankofa Group. I really meant to put this one last, but this one is actually vacant land, and I don't know why I put rehabilitate in there, so that's my fault. But it's actually vacant land. It's new construction, and it's broken into two phases. Phase one being a commercial structure that will contain retail and office space, and then phase two would be 8 to 12 affordable residential units. This one is very preliminary, so this one has not come through the DRP yet. The developer is waiting on LOIs from financial institutions just to like kind of understand what the financing could even look like for this. So this one is really in the beginning stages. Next slide. Communion Place will rehabilitate 2932 Wiley Avenue. This will be a mixed use development. It is also broken into two phases. So phase one will do the first floor commercial space, and that will have 3 offices, including Communion Place, which is another architecture firm. And then phase two will have 6 units of affordable housing at 50 to 80% AMI. And they're in the fundraising pre-development stage right now. I will say that they are pretty close to getting to that third URA board action and getting to closing for phase one, at least. I believe this has gone through the DRP, right? Okay, great. So that one is moving pretty smoothly for phase one. Next slide. Our Kendall, this one's a fun one. This one was new construction, and it constructed 6 for sale residential townhomes. And 2 of the townhomes will be for sale affordable housing. So this one is actually under construction right now. It's about 78% complete, with an estimated completion of this quarter of this year. So we'll keep track of that, but we're hoping to have a ribbon cutting for that pretty soon. And then I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Julia, to go over the Lower Hill slide.
Thanks, Lily. Good evening, everyone. So this is a slide about the Lower Hill Block E2 entertainment venue, which is the project that I believe, currently going through the DRP process. So it is a music venue that will be located between Wiley, Logan Street, and Fullerton Street in the Lower Hill site. It's a pretty large footprint. It has 4,500 seating capacity. It'll be a ballroom, and there will be commercial space available, including a URA retail incubator space that will be located on Wiley. Its developer is Live Nation with a partnership with PAR, the Penn's redevelopment arm. And so this project has been approved by the URA board for the third board action, and we are pending closing. We expect to close this quarter. And that's all. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And then our last slide is this Avenues of Hope American Rescue Plan Act grant. In 2023, $1 million was allocated to Center Avenue as an Avenue of Hope corridor through ARPA. And then, so 8 projects were funded with that money through a competitive grant process, including Allen Enterprises, HH Main LLC, Black Beauty Cafe LLC, Catapult, Greater Pittsburgh, Hill District Federal Credit Union, Salon XO, Salems, and Butch's Styles and Cuts. If anybody has any more questions or any like comments about this particular slide, that's just something I would have to get back to the project manager about. So feel free to reach out to me. And that's all for me.
Thank you. We do have some participants, so if any of you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or drop them in the chat. Leah and Julie work at the URA. Their contact information is through their website. We are also happy to provide that with anyone who watches this recording, so please don't be afraid to reach out to us at the Hill CDC either. I'll give a couple more seconds if anyone has any questions, but we'll be moving on to...
There is a question.
Oh, there is? Awesome.
There is. So the question is, are there any youth development centers in works, like a Boys and Girls Club?
Not at current, not with any of the projects that we're working on at the URA. I'm in the Hill specifically.
Okay, Diane, are there any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. We'll pass things over to the team at PWSA. Looks like we have Julie.
Good evening. First of all, a comment. I think what everything is happening in the URA up in the Hill District is fantastic. So great work to you, URA, and the partnership with the CDC. And can you see me? Because I can't see my own video. Okay, good. All right. Fantastic. So I am the Director of Customer Service with Pittsburgh Water and Sewer, and I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the state of Pittsburgh Water. So just a reminder, as an organization, we are a municipal authority. We are also governed by the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. So we are a not-for-profit organization. All of the ratepayer dollars that we collect for the services that we provide for water, wastewater conveyance, and stormwater go back into the infrastructure for those services and then also to run the organization. Next slide. And we as an organization have developed these mission, vision, and core values. And these core values really permeate everything we do with the staff and all of our messaging. We want to be stewards of the water resources that we have available to us to make certain that we have water quality in mind with everything that we're doing. And we'll talk a little bit later in the slides about how we protect the water source. And then we act with ethics and integrity, and we hold ourselves accountable at all stages in interacting with customers. We also are safety minded, and we build in equity, working with our customers, our developers, our vendors. That's always top of mind. And so I'd just like to read the mission to everyone, just so that you can know, what we point to when we're making decisions as an organization. Our mission is to support our region by protecting public health and the environment through the delivery of safe and reliable water services with a commitment to future generations. Next slide. So a little mission moment here on hydration. We do encourage everyone to drink plenty of the water that we provide, similar to what I have next to me all day long. But we need to stay hydrated. Things like pop and coffee are diuretics, and they actually can make you even more dehydrated and make you lose that vital, 70% of your body being water. Next slide. So some facts about Pittsburgh Water. We actually have 116,200-ish customers that we bill on a monthly basis. The majority of those are both water and wastewater conveyance customers. So we don't actually treat the sewage, but it goes to Alcosan, the Allegheny County Sanitary Authority, for treatment. And we convey all of the wastewater from our homes and businesses to Alcosan. We have about 30,000 accounts that are wastewater only. So there are other water companies within our territory. And we have about a little over 5,000 stormwater only accounts. We serve about 500,000 people, and that's inclusive of the accounts we bill, the number of people in those households, also the fact that we provide water service to people who come into the central business district to work. And then we also have wholesale accounts with regional utilities where they're actually reselling the water that we provide. We have a little over 400 employees. And our Aspen Mall treatment plant is permitted to produce up to 100 million gallons of water per day. We're right around 65 million, but we have the ability to scale up. We also have about 960, it says one on the slide, but I believe it's 5 lines for water. And if those are laid end to end, they run from here in the city of Pittsburgh all the way down to Disney World in Florida. We have about 1,200 miles of sewer lines to convey that waste throughout the system. We also then maintain things such as manholes, our catch basins, fire hydrants, and valves. So our field operations crews are very busy every day of the week, not only responding to water main breaks, but also doing planned work to make certain that those devices all work when we need them to. Next slide. We're also out there removing the lead from our system. So currently, we have replaced over 11,500 public lead lines. and over 8,300 private lead lines. We have participated in the White House's Get the Lead Out panel discussion event. We're really seeing nationwide, and I've had the opportunity to have this experience at various conferences this year, but we're seeing nationwide as a leader in the lead removal initiative. We had lead level exceedances back in 2015 and 16 and have worked diligently ever since in our program continuously year round to remove lead service lines. So we do that. Initially, we did that with the Women for Healthy Environment and focusing on areas where there were children and families. And then we moved to all neighborhoods. And we also are strategically removing the lead when we're doing small and large water main removals or replacements. So when we identify the lead, we're removing it from the system. Next slide. And this graph shows you that, like I said, we had exceedances early on back in 2016. And then we also, in tandem with removing the lead lines, added orthophosphate, which is a food grade additive. And that literally coats the pipes and stops the lead from, leaching off of the pipes. And many other regulated water utilities in our space had already had that in their systems for years. So adding that plus continuing to remove all the lead lines has reduced our lead level significantly. So you can see with the line across the top from that 15, that's 15 parts per billion, which is the EPA action level. And we have been at 5 or lower parts per billion for at least the last 7 samplings. Next slide. If you have a question about the possibility of lead in your service line and we haven't yet gotten to your neighborhood, you can request a lead test kit. That is available to all of our customers. Takes about 10 days to be received. There's instructions in there. We provide the postage. Once you fill up the containers, you return them to us through the mail. And within 4 to 6 weeks, you'll be able to know what those test results are. There's a URL right there to request the test kit, but you can also call our lead help group. They're staffed each day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I'll put the phone number in the chat, but just now for the recording, it's 412-255-8987. So where are we with our water reliability plan? Unfortunately, we are the generation that is going to be responsible for making certain that our water and sewer systems are available for the next 100 years. A lot of our infrastructure is aged just like everyone else on the Northeast. So our water reliability plan is focused on multiple phases. Here in this picture, you see that we did hold a media event just recently, back in September, just a couple weeks ago, highlighting the fact that the construction of our Highland Reservoir pump station is, very much underway. We, previous to that, completed 2 projects, the Highland 2 Reservoir liner and cover replacement, and then rising mains, which are large diameter pipes that bring water through our distribution system from our plant to the rest of the distribution system. We replaced or upgraded 2 of those. So our pump station that we're working on now is the first new building to be constructed in over 20 years. It will improve water reliability and also reduce the likelihood of interruptions of service due to breaks. And this adds 56 million gallons per day of redundant supply to 2/3 of our water service territory. Thanks, Dylan. So I mentioned earlier that we have the capability to produce 100 gallons per day. 100 million gallons per day, but we produced an average of 63 million gallons per day last year. We also perform about 300 water quality tests per month. So that's 100,000 tests per year. We provide water for about 500,000 people. So we want to make certain that that water is, completely free of contaminants and also tested at multiple stages throughout the distribution process. Our water is safe and meets or exceeds all regulatory requirements. So with respect to the Hill District and our lead service line replacement program, all of our inspections are expected to be complete in that neighborhood by the end of this year. The replacement work to replace all the identified lead lines will begin in January of 2025. We do estimate that the replacement work will be complete by the end of April, so it'll run about 4 months. But we do want everyone to understand that restoration of their site takes a little bit longer. So it's important to get the lead out. We do the trenchless as much as possible to have the least disruption to your property. And then when in fact we are done with that work, we may have disturbed the street or disturbed the sidewalk. It's important that we make it a safe area so we can do a temporary, what's called a temporary restoration, but it might take several months for us to come back and do that permanent restoration. So we just ask that you have patience for that. And then we also have the URL there about lead line replacement programs. And I do see a question in the chat, if I could honor it. How are community members informed, or how can we keep up with line replacements as they happen? My experience has been a team comes out and just starts digging. We have no clue why. We may get a robocall from time to time. So lead service line replacement should start with what's called an owner agreement. Those are mailed out to all the customers who we identified as having a lead service line. It's very important that you read that agreement thoroughly and then respond if you are the owner of record. If not, talk to the landlord, talk to the owner, have them review that material, and then sign it and get it back to our office so that we can do this free work for the enhancement of your property and the removal of the lead. That's the first stage. Lead Help is always there to tell you about the programs, but also that website, you literally just go on to pgh20.com and type lead in the search, and you will get to a plethora of information about the schedule, the neighborhoods that we're working in. Because we're doing both neighborhood targeted removal and removal based on small and large water main replacements, there's a lot of work going on simultaneously. So if you do find that someone's working in the neighborhood and you've gotten no information about it whatsoever, you can either look at the website 24/7, you can call our emergency dispatchers. They have GIS maps that show who's working where and why. And that's by dialing 255-2423 and pressing option 1. So I'll put all that information in the chat at the end. Thanks for that great question. You're welcome. So how are funds spent by us? And again, as a publicly owned and operated utility, all of the dollars that we collect from our ratepayers go back into our systems for the delivery of safe, reliable water services. This pie chart shows how those dollars are spent. Some of the labels are a little bit cut off here, but I'll walk you through it. So for the water distribution piece, that's our biggest piece. Obviously to keep their treatment plant running, the distribution system, which is that 965 miles of water lines, all of that, keeping that in operation is the bulk of where our funds go. The next highest spend is the wastewater conveyance, and then the water pumping and storage piece. So in addition to getting the water distributed, we have tanks in various locations, and that holds on to that potable water so that we can feed different parts of our system that are gravity fed. We also spend about 14% of our budget on stormwater improvements. We have seen rainfall. If anyone watched the Steeler game on Sunday, you saw it very localized, very, overwhelming. And there's been instances where there are certain low-lying areas where customers are getting flooded. We have a great stormwater installation at Center and Heron, and we are doing those all over our territory in multiple neighborhoods to try and reduce overland flooding, stop basement backups, and keep our creeks, rivers, and streams free of any type of debris. We also have our administrative costs, which is about 8%, and then our water treatment plant directly is about 5%. Next slide. So how do we find alternative sources of funding in addition to the ratepayers paying the bills? We have gone after Penvest loans and grants. So those have all funded our lead removal programs, our wastewater conveyance sewer rehab programs, small diameter main replacements for water, and some safety and security measures as well. In addition to the PennVest loans and grants, we go after EPA WIFIA federal loans, which is for our water reliability projects mostly. And then since 2018, we've received nearly $700 million in grants and loans. So 62 million has been in grants, which are monies that we do not have to pay back. And then 637 are in low interest loans. And funding all of these items through these low interest loans and grants has greatly reduced the cost to our ratepayers, saving them $635 million over time as compared to traditional loans. Okay, next slide. So near and dear to my heart are our customer assistance programs. I've talked a lot about this throughout the country. We have one of the most robust programs anywhere to be found. We have multiple ways of helping you. I really encourage everyone who knows someone who might be struggling, who is struggling, neighbors, friends, relatives, to reach out to our CARES team. But I'll go through these programs a little bit here. So our bill discount program in 2024 used to be at the 150% of the federal poverty level, but we identified that there were a lot of people in that middle range between the 150 and 200 that really needed to be helped. When we get those program calls on our CARES team, we were identifying that people were just over the limit. So we increased the limit, and now we have the ability to offer that first 1,000 gallons for water and wastewater conveyance completely for free. In addition, if you're super struggling at 50% of the FPL, you'll get a 60% reduction of your volumetric charge, which is all of your usage over and above that first 1,000 gallons. If you're carrying a past due balance because the low-income household water assistance program is no longer operating LIWOP for the feds, then we can still assist you. You can get on an active payment plan, and each month that you make an on-time payment, we will reduce your back charges by $40. So as you're paying your debt off, so are we. We also offer hardship grants, and again, because of LIWOP not being funded, we saw the need to increase. Our previous annual grant was $300. We've increased it this year to be $450 for each water and wastewater. So if you have both services with us, which everyone in the Hill does, and you're a residential low-income customer, you can qualify for up to $900 granted to reduce your back charges a year. So there's a lot of help out there for our customers. That bill discount program reduces your bill on an annual basis over $600. And this next slide will show you a little bit more about that. Oh, sorry, it's a slide after this. So our line repair and water conservation pilot, I kicked this off about a year ago, September 5th of 2023. We have been able to help 136 customers with leaks in their homes. So if you have a leak on an exposed pipe, or you have a failing device such as a shower head or toilet that's leaking, we will replace it with a low flow device for free. So if you call our CARES team and you qualify at that 200% of the federal poverty level or lower, our plumbing contractor will come out to your property, and they're very well versed in helping low income customers because they work with Action Housing and some other utilities low income programs. They will come out and they will do a whole review of your property and find all of your leaks. They will also install new valves. If you have valves that are leaking, they'll install a shutoff valve, a pressure regulator, toilet, shower heads, and fix plumbing leaks. So we've helped 136 people to date, and we've reduced their usage on average by 13% a month. So not only are they in the bill discount program and they're getting that reduction of their bills, but they're also seeing a reduction in their overall bill because they've allowed our plumber to come in and make these repairs. So it's going to reduce any damage to the property because water can get everywhere. And then also to add value to your property and reduce your bills going forward. We have money in the pilot to help about 100 more customers. So please get the word out. There's a QR code here on the screen, and also just call our CARES team and I'll put their number in the chat as well as it being on this slide. Next slide, please. So looking at our typical residential customers, the first table above shows you that the bottom row is the typical usage that we see, which is about 3,000 gallons per household. And in this year, that's $100.27. If you are a bill discount customer struggling financially, the same meter, the same usage, your bill is only $49.94. So this drives home the fact that you're seeing about a $600+ reduction annually in your monthly Pittsburgh water bills. Next slide. We also introduced a rain barrel credit this year, and that's to also help residential customers control stormwater. If you install a rain barrel, which you then can use to capture rainwater to use for gardening, any type of irrigation on your property, any type of landscaping that you put in, you get a one-time $40 credit on your account. So there's also a scannable QR code here, and you can learn more on our website. And I just want to thank everybody for their attention. I do have a couple of additional information to put in. I see Rachel's put a ton of information in there as well. Lots of good contacts. Feel free to reach out to us. The customer service department is open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then our emergency dispatchers are open 24/7. So every day of the week, any time of the day, if you have any type of water or sewer or stormwater emergency, you can give us a call. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Julie, for that detailed presentation. We'll hold a little second or two here for any questions from our participants. We routinely direct people to the CARES team, and we've heard nothing but great things. So we appreciate you highlighting that and all of the work that you're doing at the PWSA to improve. I'm excited to hear that April 2025, that's going to be here in no time. So that's really great to hear. And we thank you again for everything. I don't think I see any other questions in the chat, so I'll move things on to the final presentations of the evening. This is from the City of Pittsburgh Department of City Planning. They have two presentations for us. The first is about zoning amendments that are being proposed citywide, and then the second will be a discussion about the Greater Hill District Master Plan. So I'll pass it over to the team at City Planning.
Hi, thanks for having us. We have three folks here as part of the presentation. My name is Kate Rakes. I'm a senior planning manager in zoning and development review, here to talk about the zoning code amendments. And we also have Shub with us to talk about the zoning code amendments. You want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shub Tucker. I am a planner with DCP in the Integrated Planning Division, focusing on long-range transportation planning and transit-oriented development across the city. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks. We have a number of zoning code amendments. We have a package of housing amendments that are coming out of the housing needs assessment. And then we're also here. Oh, yeah, thank you. I should have gone to the agenda.
You're good. You're good.
So Shub is going to start us off talking about the housing needs assessment, and then we're going to talk about some of the zoning changes coming out of that work. Then I'll talk about the fair housing amendments, and we'll just sort of capture next steps, and we can take questions at the end or along the way, however it works best for folks.
All right, cool. So like Kate said, we're going to do a quick little overview of the housing needs assessment. The findings from this report is kind of what prompted these zoning changes. So the housing needs assessment is a housing study that the city of Pittsburgh finalized in 2022. So the main objectives of this study were to kind of provide a comprehensive understanding of housing needs, and then also creating some sort of like data-driven resource on the housing market to kind of guide future policy decisions. So the housing needs assessment kind of aims to address three categories of needs. So first category is people's needs, so the needs of city residents, how housing issues are affecting Pittsburgh families, and how housing relates to larger demographic trends. The report also is excuse me, I am so sorry. The report also assesses like the city's housing stock, so kind of like the condition and vacancy status of certain housing across the city, the affordability of housing, and then also current investments into the housing stock and what that looks like. And then lastly, it kind of looks at Pittsburgh neighborhoods holistically, including how housing kind of impacts other areas and how neighborhoods are changing in general. So a few key findings from the housing needs assessment. From the research that came out of the housing needs assessment, we found out that low-income renters are leaving the city of Pittsburgh, particularly Black families and households. The number of Black homeowners is falling in the city, but then rising in other Allegheny County municipalities. That is likely because rising rents and home prices within the city's neighborhoods are pricing low-income renters and homeowners out, and then they're moving to other suburbs within Allegheny County that might be a little bit more affordable. Um, According to the housing needs assessment, when it comes to kind of addressing and gauging housing needs, we found out that new housing construction is 90% multifamily. So that's more apartment buildings that are being built than single family homes. Most of the single family homes that are being built, or most of the investment that's occurring with single family homes, is in kind of flipping existing homes. And then multifamily rental is projected to be the majority of future housing need. And then when it comes to the needs of specific neighborhoods, I sort of alluded to this already, but home prices are increasing throughout the city and all of its neighborhoods. And then because of that, renters across the city are being displaced because they just cannot afford to keep up with those rising rents. There's a number of reasons for this. One big thing is just poor housing conditions in general. There's also a lot of concentrations of poor housing in specific neighborhoods of the city. And a lot of our neighborhoods just lack a good supply of income restricted and affordable housing. So recommendations wise, the housing needs assessment kind of gives us three categories of recommendations. So the first is land use. So our land use policies kind of shape where our housing is located, what our housing looks like, and how much housing can be built on a specific parcel or a specific property. This is kind of the bulk of what the Department of City Planning does. So everything going forward will mainly be land use recommendation policies. But the housing needs assessment also covers recommendations related to subsidy and funding for affordable housing projects, as well as policy that would protect tenants' rights. So the zoning code amendments that Kate and I are about to present to you are land use policies to increase the housing supply and facilitate transit-oriented development. So as planners within city planning, we are best equipped to make those recommendations. That's kind of like what we do for work. So we're the ones that kind of propose changes to the zoning code and kind of work with the way the physical environment of our city looks. We're pretty much like trying to change like parts of the base zoning to accommodate different types of development. You're not going to see any like radical changes happening overnight. For major projects, there will be community engagement meetings, development activities meetings, all that fun stuff. These zoning code amendments are kind of a step zero to kind of set the stage for the type of housing development we want to see going forward. So also wanted to provide a quick little brief overview of transit-oriented development because that is a pretty decent chunk of some of these zoning amendments. If you want to go to the next slide. So transit-oriented development, or TOD for short, is the creation of compact, walkable, pedestrian-oriented, mixed-use communities centered around transportation infrastructure such as bus lines, transit stations, and light rail. So TOD with an equitable framework has a lot of benefits to the community, including number one, reduce dependence on cars. Yay. So TOD supports the creation of mixed use districts where an individual can live, run basic errands, get to work, and just socialize without really needing a car, reduces the need for parking. In addition, in the long run, since we're getting cars off the road, there's also potential for traffic congestion to be decreased and just make it to where you need to go more efficiently. So thinking of like a neighborhood where like you're in your apartment, your bank is 2 blocks away, there's a laundromat right behind you, there's a grocery store a few blocks away, And then you're also right next to a bus stop conveniently. So you can hop on the bus and get to work, get to other neighborhoods to see friends, and you can just get around and live your daily life without needing a car. Um, in turn, TOD also encourages increased transit ridership, so it just makes it easier for residents of the neighborhood to travel without a car. Makes transit a more feasible option because more people will just be living closer to transportation infrastructure. If you live within like a 5-minute walk of a train station or a bus stop, it becomes just way more feasible to actually use it. A lot of people would like to use transit more, but it's not a feasible option because they either live far away from a stop or they just can't get there. So TOD kind of helps to address that piece of the puzzle. Also promotes environmentally friendly development by reducing that need for car travel, which can in turn sort of lower greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality. This can also help the city adapt to climate change by reducing dependency on our fossil fuels. And it can also enhance social equity. If you want to go to the next slide. So there is a really, really important link between transportation and housing, which is why transit-oriented development is such an important foundational component of some of these zoning amendments. So because transit-oriented development does make people less dependent, excuse me, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Because TOD does make it easier for you to sort of live without a car, it can enhance social equity because cars are really expensive to maintain. They're a huge financial burden. In addition, very important to note that Black households, households of lower socioeconomic status, are also disproportionately likely to not have a car, which makes it harder then to access jobs, healthcare, grocery stores, other social services. There's a really important link between transportation and housing, kind of helps to create an environment where people without cars and they don't have the ability to shoulder that financial burden of having a car, you can still access jobs and education and just get access to the economy in general. So when you consider like the payment on a car itself, like your gas, your maintenance, your oil, your insurance, owning a car does become a significant chunk of your family's income. So affordable housing that is located in those transit-rich areas plays a really, really important role in improving the quality of life and enhanced access for low and moderate income residents. So by providing efficient public transportation next to affordable housing, residents can easily reach employment opportunities, jobs, and everywhere else that you need to get to in your daily life. So DCP's biggest goal here is to increase opportunity for development near our fixed guideway transit stations. So we are starting off with specific changes to the zoning of certain properties around South Hills Junction, Sheridan Station, and Heron Station. And then you can go ahead and skip that slide. That's like a specific map of specific zoning changes around our South Hills Junction. But cool. Moving on to some of the more citywide zoning amendments. The first citywide zoning amendment Kate and I are here to propose to you today is the by right development of accessory dwelling units. What is an accessory dwelling unit, you ask? So ADUs are secondary housing units that are situated on a residential property. So these units offer an independent living space. You'll find like a kitchen, a bathroom, some sort of bedroom or living space. You can also find ADUs in different forms. So if you look at the slide, you can put an ADU like over your garage. You can turn your actual garage into an ADU. It can be a standalone unit, or you can like convert your basement or your attic. If you want to go to the next slide. ADUs are kind of becoming a bigger part of the conversation on housing supply for multiple reasons. Big reason is sustainability. They're smaller than traditional single family homes, which means they have a smaller footprint, meaning lower material costs associated with them. In addition, you can build ADUs on existing residential properties, so that promotes infill development a little bit more. And then because of that infill development kind of mitigates the impacts of urban sprawl, commuters can potentially have more housing options that can allow them to like stay within the city. Means that people have more options to stay in the city and like not kind of sprawl outwards and then have to like commute into the city, which then in turn could reduce greenhouse gas emissions related to transportation. Um, Another big thing with ADUs is that they kind of allow for multi-generational households and aging in place. So can allow multiple generations of family or aging relatives or extended family to live on that same property comfortably. This can make it much easier to take care of family members. Also provides financial savings for members of older generations that might not be able to afford to like live on their own. Last big thing here is that owners of a single family residential property can earn passive rental income by adding an ADU and then renting it out, which can help build generational wealth. So like I sort of talked about before, DCP wants to make it easier for owners of just to clarify, Kate, just to confirm, it's all residential, not just single family, right?
Yep, all residential.
Cool, sounds good. So all residential parcels, owners of those parcels, we want to give them the right to build those ADUs by allowing for their development in the zoning code by right. So that pretty much means if you would like to build an ADU, you won't have to go through any sort of like discretionary approval process. You won't have to go through any like public hearings, like a development activities meeting, because it's a small scale development. I know how much we all love an evening public meeting, but you won't have to do that if you would like to build an ADU under this amendment. Just removes regulatory barriers in general if you are interested in building one. So a few places where this has already sort of worked to increase the housing supply. One city we look to is Portland, Oregon. In the city of Portland, there is no need to get like any sort of conditional use permit or go through any sort of regulatory process or like get any like approval or anything. So these zoning changes, I think, went into impact in 2021. And then it allowed for the development of like duplexes, triplexes, and ADUs on certain zones that were designated originally just for single family development. And then in a 2023 report, Portland's planning department kind of found out that those zoning changes allowed for 271 new units to be built on only 81 parcels. Another case study we looked to was San Diego. So in 2009, San Diego legalized the development of ADUs. They also created an incentive program for them to remedy housing shortages and promote denser development. So property owners were given the ability to build more ADUs than permitted if they were rented out at an affordable rate. These units were exempt from public hearings and discretionary review, and it's led to the development of ADUs that can be rented out affordably. Cool. Next citywide amendment we're proposing is an expansion of our existing inclusionary zoning work. So inclusionary zoning is a policy mechanism that requires new residential developments to make a percentage of their units affordable to low or moderate income residents. So it ensures that neighborhoods can offer new housing units at a variety of price points by tying the construction of market rate housing to affordable housing. So it integrates those income restricted units into market rate projects. The main point of inclusionary zoning is it aims to reduce economic segregation by creating mixed income communities in urban areas. So right now, our inclusionary zoning overlays are currently active in Polish Hill, Lawrenceville, Bloomfield, and then specific areas in Oakland. In addition to this base inclusionary zoning work, developers also have the option to create those affordable housing units that they're required to create outside of that specific project site. If you want to go to the next slide. So DCP wants to expand our inclusionary zoning policy citywide so that 10% of the units that developers build have to be affordable for developments of 20 units or more. So any housing project or housing development that's above 20 units, 10% of those units would then have to be rented out at an affordable rate. And then the other ones are rented out at the market rate. These rental units under this ordinance would be permanently affordable. Also, this proposed change would increase offsite options from a quarter mile to a half mile. So if developers choose to leverage that offsite option and build their affordable units as required in a different area than their primary site, they have the option to then build those affordable units within a half mile of the original development. If you want to go to the next slide. Kind of touched on some of these already. Kate, am I missing anything here? Are there any other specific things
I
with
think you're good.
IZ here? Cool. Are we good to move on to the next slide then?
Yeah.
Cool. And then if you want to take it with the
Sure, I can do
development
this one.
bonuses.
So yeah, as part of this current expansion of inclusionary zoning, we're looking at expanding development bonuses. This is just to make it, we don't want inclusionary zoning to kill development, right? So we want developers to actually build these units and actually lease these units to folks that need them. So part of that is providing the development bonuses. So currently we do have some height and density bonuses in our performance point system, but these are only in certain parts of the city. So as part of this expansion of IZ, we would allow developments outside of these areas that aren't eligible to receive these performance points to get an additional 30 feet of height, an additional floor area ratio. So that's density. And then for projects that are eligible for performance points, they're exempt from any upper story step back requirements. But basically gives them a little bit of extra density and they don't have to change the building envelope to meet the step back requirements. And then residential compatibility standards for height are not applicable to any of the inclusionary developments. All right, we can do next slide. We took a look at some projects that if they were able to use the bonuses that I just described on the previous slide, they would have been able to do and build those developments without going to the zoning board for any variances. So folks may have heard about these projects in the news. The one is the Bloomfield Sure Save site, the former grocery store, or I guess it's currently the Giant Eagle grocery store at the base of the Bloomfield Bridge. I would have been able to build their project with affordable units by right. And then the Shakespeare Street Market Giant Eagle that they're currently building, that needed to go to the zoning board. They are providing affordable units, so that one wouldn't have had to go to the zoning board for that. They would have been able to do it by right. We also took a look at some cities. Inclusionary zoning is not a new policy, just like ADUs, but that does give us the opportunity to learn from these other cities and what's worked and what hasn't. We actually just had a call with city planners from Minneapolis to talk about what's worked with their program and ways that we can make sure we're crafting the best possible policy and zoning code amendments that we can. And then Portland, Oregon has had inclusionary zoning for quite a while and has successfully produced IZ units. All right, this one, and that's back to Shub. I think.
Cool.
Is that back to you?
Yeah, I think so.
Go for it.
Cool. Next citywide amendment, parking minimum reform. So right now, Pittsburgh's current zoning code requires developers to build out a minimum number of parking spots for residential and commercial developments. DCP wants to get rid of this requirement. These parking spots are not free to build. They cost a lot of money. And then developers then pass those expenses on to the people who then buy or rent the units in that development. The expense of a parking spot is reflected in your mortgage payments or your rent in the same way that like your rent would be higher if you had like amenities like an updated kitchen or in-unit laundry. Parking is seen as an amenity that then leads to the increase of the cost of housing, but then you're kind of forced to provide that amenity by law. So even if you don't want a parking spot, you're still paying for it in that development. So because developers have to provide parking spots by law, residents of these developments are pretty much forced to pay for parking, even if they don't want a car, or even if they don't own a car, or they don't want a house with a parking spot. So requiring developers to create like a specified number of parking spots kind of contributes overall to the increased price of housing, which then makes housing less accessible to lower income individuals and families that again might not even have a car. So This amendment would allow the market to decide how much parking is necessary rather than forcing developers to build out like an arbitrary number of parking spots where it's not even necessary. So this amendment to the zoning code is not going to remove any legally existing parking spaces. All of our like existing offsite parking will stay intact, and then it will also not prohibit the building of new parking spaces and structures. There's just no requirement to build out a certain number in the zoning code. Next slide, if that's cool. Getting rid of parking minimums isn't scary or like as scary as it sounds. A ton of cities that removed parking minimums from their zoning code found that parking availability kind of finds a natural equilibrium and then adjusts to that actual need without any major issues. Developers can also still choose to build parking if they would like, if they think it's necessary or feasible. And they can choose to build out the number of parking spots based on what the market looks like and site specific characteristics rather than just like some blanket mandate that covers the entire city or like an entire neighborhood. Any effects of getting rid of parking minimums will be very gradual as well. It's not something you're, again, just going to see overnight. So like Kate said, we've kind of been taking a look at case studies where amendments like this have worked in other areas. In this case, one success story with getting rid of parking minimums is Seattle. Seattle was one of the first cities to get rid of parking minimums. I think they did it in like 2012. And a ton of market analyses and studies have shown that developers still build out the number of parking spots that like would be like necessary for housing, but any savings were directly passed on to renters or home buyers. To provide an example closer to home, Buffalo did the same thing a few years ago, and they're already starting to see the benefits as well. So the big point here is getting rid of parking minimums reduces the cost of developing housing and commercial development. So that promotes affordability and efficient land use. Also shifts the focus from car dependency to sustainable transportation, especially when we consider how intimately housing and transportation are linked. Also helps to maintain the historical character of neighborhoods. A lot of neighborhoods in Pittsburgh were like formed and kind of flourished in an area in an era where the car was not as common. So a lot of our neighborhoods just aren't physically built for cars, and kind of allowing developers that discretion to kind of discern what number of parking spots is adequate kind of helps to maintain that historical integrity. Cool. And then Kate, this is you, right? Cool.
Actually, we go to the next slide. Actually, go 2 slides. I'm going to go to the next one. I think it's easier to understand if we go to the next one. Yep. Okay. All right. So what is minimum lot size and minimum lot size per unit? So minimum lot size means when you have a residential zoning district and you want to build a new single family home. So say the first top box on the top left, a moderate density, the current minimum lot size is 3,200 square feet. So you need to have a piece of property that's at least 3,200 square feet in order to build a single family home. Then if you say you wanted to build a 2-unit home, below that is the minimum lot size per unit. So for moderate density, that's 800 square feet per unit. So you would need to then double that to 32 to be able to do 2 units there. So what this does is it increases the amount of land that's needed for home construction, and also which then increases the cost, right? And it increases, it reduces possible density. It doesn't require you to have a smaller lot size. The minimum lot size requires you to have a larger lot size, although if we reduce them, it doesn't require properties to reduce them. But the current proposal is to reduce, so on the right-hand side is what the proposed minimum lot size would be under these current amendments. So basically what we're looking to do is to make the lot sizes smaller, again, more affordable. A lot of these numbers we've taken a look at, and they actually, in a lot of our zoning districts, the existing lot sizes, so where there's already parcels that are platted, they are often smaller than what the minimum lot size per unit for those districts are. So this actually brings these amendments would bring these numbers closer to what actually exists in our neighborhoods. And then again, also with the goal of bringing down the cost of development with the smaller land size. And then I think the map is the next slide if we go to that. So yeah, this just shows you a quick snapshot of where these would be impacted. And again, this is citywide, but only where these zoning districts are located. All right, and then we can go to the next one, which is fair housing amendments. All right, so this is legislation that has already been through Planning Commission. They've made a recommendation to City Council, but with they made a condition on the recommendation to City Council that we do some more community outreach. So that's one of the reasons that we were talking about this legislation today. So we propose these amendments to make sure that the zoning code complies with the Federal Fair Housing Act. So the amendments in 1988 basically prohibits the city from placing any additional zoning requirements on a community residence for people with disabilities and otherwise meets the requirements for other residential uses. So this means that we can't require them to go to the zoning board or go to planning commission or city council. If a multi-unit residential is permitted, then any sort of residential for people with disabilities would be permitted through the same process. The changes also allow us to better align with the way the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania regulates these uses. We do require that licensure. If a certain group housing use requires a licensure from the state, they still need to get that. This doesn't get them out of any of those requirements. But it also provides a little bit more flexibility. And then it also is easier. The zoning use standards are clearer, so it makes it easier for applicants and communities to understand the zoning regulations around these group living uses. So we can go to the next slide. All right, this is a lot of jargon, so I will take any questions at the end. Right now, there's sort of two group living uses for residents that can be disabled or not. They're personal care residences and community homes. They're kind of duplicative, so we're going to go ahead and merge them. Again, we're clarifying that if group residential uses require state licensure, they still need to comply. And then we're expanding the definition to make it clear that transitional housing, such as women's shelters, drug rehab sites, and other similar types of uses weren't addressed in the code, and they need to be. And again, this provides clarity as well as regulatory compliance. And then, back one, sorry. And then there's a smaller version of the personal care homes, which is similar to a 1 or 2 unit residential that's permitted in the same places that a 1 or 2 unit single family home would be permitted. And then the larger version of the personal care homes would be permitted the same as a multi-unit residential. Think about an apartment building. Go to the next one. Okay, some other changes. We're just clarifying that assisted living facilities include nursing homes to prevent any conflict with state requirements. We're reducing the age for senior housing to 55 to comply with federal fair housing. And it's aligned again wherever a multi-unit residential, so apartment building, wherever an apartment building would be allowed, senior housing is allowed. Multi-suite residential, these are residential units that don't necessarily have shared private kitchens. So it's more of a shared living space, but these again are aligned with apartment buildings. It's the same sort of impact on a neighborhood that an apartment building would be. And then we've created interim housing use that permits alternate housing typologies. This requires a trip to the zoning board for a special exception. They have to meet certain public safety and building code requirements. It require community outreach, and they are permitted any place where a hotel would be. So again, sort of think about short-term stays where somebody would be staying for a night or two. That's sort of where we've classified these in the zoning code. Now you can go to the next one, sorry. Okay, and then since Planning Commission, we added the language about licensing. Said dormitories can't be permitted outside of any sort of the institutional districts like in Oakland. And then we required that wraparound services or social services be provided for the interim housing use. And then next slide. Okay, all right. Do you want me to do this one or do you have this, Shub?
Go for it, Kate.
The bigger picture, we can go to the next slide. All right. Again, so as Shub started out by talking about the housing needs assessment, we are trying to put this package of zoning code reforms together to provide opportunities for residents of all income levels, increase and diversify our housing supply, and allow folks to find housing that they can afford. We really know that there's a lot of work still to do, but we hope that these set the stage for increasing the housing supply and creating walkable, pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly communities. All right, go ahead. All right, and then other work that we are doing, we are applying for the Pro Housing Grant at the federal level to get more funding to continue this work. We are also kicking off the city's comprehensive plan, and PRT has their equitable transit-oriented development policy. All right, next slide. Okay, so if you haven't visited our Engage PGH page, please do. We have pages on there for both the fair housing amendments that we're taking comments and questions on, as well as all of the work that's coming out of the housing needs assessment. This will have a detailed timeline as we move forward. Again, you can review all the policies and details, leave comments and questions, and we will respond. You can also sign up for updates, so when they update the page, you'll be notified. That's where we are. Yes, all right, there is our contact information. And I saw somebody in the chat had a question about IZ.
Yeah,
But I
Daniel,
can also
like,
go at the end after OSA's presentation. Or
I
I can
think
also
it might make more sense just to do it now. Thank you, Kate. Thank you,
Yeah.
Shub. That was a lot of information that you packed
Yeah.
into a very precise and concise presentation. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the work you're doing at City Planning. Daniel, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, you're more than welcome to. They also have their contact information here as well if you'd like to talk with them outside of this meeting.
I might actually do both, but
Okay, great.
I'll be quick. No, I appreciate the information. Kind of second what Dylan just said. I guess the quick two questions I have around inclusionary zoning. I guess the first question is around kind of the funding for it. I know I was actually I helped staff the committee that put that recommendation together back in 2018, and that was kind of a big piece that we kind of put as to whether or not IZ, basically whether or not it would work. I know the funding piece has kind of been a kind of hot issue. I'm just curious if there's anything kind of in the works for that to kind of accompany any of the changes.
So really, as part of this process, we are again looking at the ability for the development bonuses, extra density, relief from the step back requirements, relief from the residential compatibility standards. Again, hopefully to make it, and again, the more density that you get, right, and the more units you can have, hopefully the more cost feasible it is. We are also, and this was in part of the original inclusionary zoning, and that we will continue forward, is also the ability for projects to take vouchers. We've seen that in a number of recent projects in the IZ in Lawrenceville. I believe the Giant Eagle Shakespeare Street is also taking vouchers, as a way for them to make up that extra revenue that they would lose otherwise for IZ. I'm less familiar. I know that right now there's the LERTA downtown if projects convert from commercial to residential units and they provide affordable units, they get a LERTA. That's the only one that I am aware of sort of on the tax break side. But I am more focused just in my day-to-day work on sort of the technical zoning aspects of it. So I'm happy to also, if you want to follow up and shoot me an email, or if you have other questions of sort of stuff that I'm just sort of less familiar with.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the clarification. I'll follow up probably. And I guess on a sort of similar note, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I had to kind of dig a little bit to try and find it. But I believe there's mention around the like the change in income for some of the inclusionary zoning, like that 10%, like a 10% of units per project. It's like if there is the change in income, there's the potential for some of the tenants to basically be evicted. And I just want to make sure that was the right version or a more recent version.
That portion hasn't changed in in the proposed expansion from where it is now to citywide. That has not changed.
Or that's in the current.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no, that works. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Any other of our participants are welcome to ask questions about the zoning amendments. Again, these are their emails. You can reach out to them, and if they can't answer your questions, I'm sure they'll connect you with someone in the city planning office that can speak to those
For
directly.
sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Shub.
Yeah,
We'll
thanks for having us. We really appreciate your time.
Obviously, of course, yeah. We'll pass things over to Osei. Osei works very closely with Diane and I. And so we're very excited to share the updates that she has with all of you about the Greater Hill District Master Plan. Please take it away, Osei.
Sure. I want to make sure you can hear me.
Yep, we got you.
Okay, gotcha. Good evening, everyone. My name is Olse Akinlowton. I currently serve as planning manager within the Department of City Planning for the East and Central neighborhoods alongside my counterpart, Alex Peppers. But more importantly, I serve as your neighborhood planner here in the Greater Hill District, inclusive of Uptown. And I am excited to be with you this evening. I'm here to provide you with updates on your Greater Hill District master planning process. As you know, we are updating and adopting that plan from 2011. We are building upon it, which is again within your original Greater Hill District master planning. As you can see, we are not only utilizing that plan, but the additional planning processes that you have worked on since then or prior to then as well, inclusive of the green print, the vacant property study, which of course, if you were able to tune into the development activities meeting that took place last month, you know that there is a stabilization process that we are leading in the Department of City Planning. For the vacant properties within the Greater Hill District. If you need any additional information there, I can connect you with the team in DCP that is leading that project, as well as the most recent plan, which is the Great Return of the Hill. We are going to be looking at that as well. So not trying to recreate the wheel, and I'll get back into that a little later. So we are going to recap. Of course, this process did begin in 2020. And it is a community-driven plan. Goals that have been outlined since then, of course, are affordable housing, economic development, that was outlined in your original RFP, cultural preservation, and transportation, and et cetera. Additionally, of course, it is a collaborative effort between not only the Department of City Planning, but partner agencies, as well as you as community stakeholders, your local leaders, and the planning team, your planning staff. Next slide. So in the planning process, we have our organized stage, which is like the preliminary stage prior to the planning process kicking off, our visualized stage, the strategized phase, which is when we are developing the preliminary documents, different things like that, which is also our stage when we have our action team meetings. And then we move into our formalized stage, which has been our longest stage, which I will provide additional information for. And then our realized stage, which is when we move into implementation, which is when the community really gets to work. And we can move into that next phase. Next slide, please. So our updated timeline. So 2020 to 2023 is when the community really put in a lot of that legwork. And we are not, again, like I said, recreating the wheel. Really do appreciate everything, all of the time that you put into this process. So all of that is not being recreated in this timeline. So all of the action team meetings you attended, the community meetings that you attended, we are not going to restart that process at all. All of that feedback and input is being inserted into this draft document that you will receive. And again, we thank you for all of that time that you put into it. 2023, we hired HRNA to come on to draft your final document for you in collaboration with your steering committee. And that final draft will be made public, most likely in January. As you can see here, we have a final adoption expected in the latter half of Q1 of 2025. And we've already identified your key focus areas. So if you remember, I did come on previously and let you know that there are 4 chapters within any plan in order to be adopted by the Planning Commission. And that is a community chapter, a development chapter, a mobility chapter, and infrastructure chapter. And that is why we did have to update your original Greater Hill District Master Plan. And there are topic areas within each of those chapters that are required in order to be adopted. So that's why we call it, or that's why we titled it the process to update and adopt your Greater Hill District Master Plan. If you can go on to the next slide. So this entire process is documented from 2020 to now on your Engage page. So as Kate was mentioning, majority of our projects through the city of Pittsburgh are on or have an Engage page, as well as your process to update and adopt. These arrows here, you cannot see me pointing to it, but I'm pointing to it on the screen. The top arrow, top red arrow, is next to a follow button. If you go on and create your own account and press follow, every time we update or have some type of blast or message that needs to be sent out, you will be updated. So go on, create your account, and click follow. So whenever we have any type of update, create a new event or anything like that, you will be updated about your process, your Greater Hill District Master Planning process. Additionally, you will see, and it's rather small here, but the second arrow button is where you will see any upcoming meetings. Currently, there are none because we are still drafting out your plan. And when we have those meetings available, they will be there. Again, this is a platform. This is a platform for you to follow the process. It will have all of the surveys and feedback options available there. And we do encourage you to participate. Next slide. So again, speaking of feedback, these are just examples of past feedback. Again, like I said, everything is documented there. If you want to verify any of the past action team meetings, videos are available, those surveys are available, any type of feedback that was received during those action team meetings, outside of those action team meetings, they're all still there from any of those meetings. So you can go there and access it. Additional resources are available. Your opportunities and constraints report is there as well. So if you can go to the next slide for me, Dylan. That is the first page of your opportunities and constraints report. There is also a historic hill district map. As you can see, the only thing that is not available is Crawford Roberts. That was the only thing that was not surveyed. However, we did receive that funding. And if you attend the next Hill District Development Activities meeting, and I'm sorry, I used the acronym prior to, but it is a damn pardon that. The Crawford Roberts consultants on October the 21st will be there to provide an additional update relative to that. So mark your calendars because it has been surveyed, so it will be filled out in the future. Next slide. And your plans framework that has been identified by your community action team and agreed upon by your steering committee or approved by your steering committee is a healthy and resilient hill district. What does that mean? It means that community members are physically and mentally well. People can access healthcare, healthy foods and services they need. Folks are self-sufficient and can take care of each other during tough times. Residents are encouraged in the community and connected to each other. Key objectives are to build capacity, increase connectedness, and foster cooperation. So you will see these in your overall Greater Hill District Master Planning process. That is the framework for your plan. Next slide. So additional community priorities, like I said, affordable housing for all income levels, protection of the cultural heritage of the Greater Hill District, and of course, investment in public infrastructure and transportation. Those are, of course, priorities, but there's much more included in your Greater Hill District Master Plan. So finally, next steps. How can you stay involved? Attend upcoming community meetings, engage with your registered community organizations like the Hill CDC. Of course, stay connected with your elected officials and your steering committee. Engage with staff through Engage PGH or myself as your neighborhood planner. Provide feedback on the final draft when it is available, and attend the plan unveiling. Your steering committee will host a larger plan unveiling so that we can, provide you with an overview of the plan itself and for you to provide feedback in person. We will also do an online unveiling as well, so you will have multiple ways to provide your feedback. And the Hill District is always involved, so stay involved. And next slide. Again, I do serve as project manager for this plan. This is my email. Assistant Director Watley is my direct supervisor, so you can contact her here. And Dr. Jamil Bey is the Director of City Planning, and this is his email. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Osei. It's been a labor of love, I can tell, and it's been a long labor of love. So we appreciate all of the work you're doing. And I don't just speak for myself, I also speak for everyone at the Hill CDC when we say thank you. Like Osei said, you can create an account really easily on the Engage page. I did it. You just need an email and a password, and you can get in notifications right to your inbox about what's going on. And like Osei mentioned, we do want to see people involved with us as your registered community organization. Our final community meeting for this year will be on November 21st. It is at the same location we've been holding them this year, which is the Pitt CEC, the Blakey Center on Wiley Avenue. Dinner will be served, so please make sure you get there early. We always have good food for everybody, and we always have a good turnout. And so we'll close things out tonight by just reminding you that you can sign up to get updates on any of these projects that you heard about. Our weekend roundup is a really awesome resource for residents, stakeholders, and friends of the Hill District to find out about everything that's possibly going on related to the development and redevelopment of this neighborhood. We have over 2,500 residents and stakeholders who subscribe, and those come out every single week. So it's a really easy way to stay informed on things happening in the Hill District. And we're also active on all of the social media platforms you see here, as well as LinkedIn. And you can always reach out to us at the Hill CDC. My email is dbrown@hilldistrict.org, and Diane's is dday. We're your policy and planning team, so we can answer any questions you might have about the master plan, about these inclusionary zoning amendments, about the PWSA presentation that came as well. And we'll connect you with everybody that we know that can maybe answer the questions better than us. So thank you all for attending tonight, all of our presenters. We really appreciate your partnership as we work together on behalf of the Hill District. We hope you all have a great evening, and we hope to see you at our community meeting next in November. Thank you all so much, and good night.